Good evening. Calling to order Special Planning Commission meeting today, Tuesday, March 31st, 2026. We'll have our roll call, please.
Chair Tidy Zamora,
Here.
Vice Chair Michael Sid Alterman,
Here.
Commissioner John Dinan,
Here.
Commissioner Joan Stewart,
Here.
and Commissioner Natasha Basso.
Here.
And in the audience, we have our alternates, Armando Rodriguez Jr. and Alex Rodriguez.
At this time, we'll have our conflict of interest statement, which is any planning commission member or staff who has a direct conflict of interest on any scheduled agenda item to be considered is to declare their conflict at this time. Seeing none, we'll move on to public comments. At this time, members of the public may comment on any item not appearing on the agenda and within the subject matter jurisdiction of the Planning Commission Board. Individual comments will be limited to a maximum of 3 minutes, and time cannot be yielded to another person. Under state law, matters presented during the public comment period cannot be discussed or acted upon. For record purposes, state your name and city of residence. Please make your comments directly to the Planning Commission members. So we'll open for public comments for any item not appearing on the agenda. Seeing none, we'll close public comments and move on to the consent calendar. All items listed on the consent calendar are to be acted upon by a single action of the Planning Commission Board unless requested by an individual Planning Commission member or member of the public for special consideration. Otherwise, the recommendation of staff will be accepted and acted upon by motion of the Planning Commission Board. Item 5.1, posting of the agenda. The agenda for March 31st, 2026. Planning Commission meeting was posted on the City Community Center Bulletin Board, City Hall North and South Bulletin Boards, Post Office, City website, and emailed to the library on March 26, 2026. Item 5.2, approval of the March 31st, 2026 agenda. This provides an opportunity for the Planning Commission or staff to recommend that an item be placed on the agenda for discussion or to adjust the proposed agenda to allow an item to be taken out of order. In item 5.3, which is approval of the November 18th, 2025 Planning Commission meeting minutes, having been read by the individual commissioners and stands approved as submitted. And abstain from voting would be Joan Stewart, who was absent. So I'll entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda.
So moved.
Approval of item 5.1 and 5.2.
I will second.
We have a first and a second. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Chair Zamora,
Yes.
Vice Chair Alterman,
Yes.
Commissioner Dinan,
Yes.
Commissioner Stewart,
Yes.
Commissioner Basso.
Yes.
Approved 5-0.
Okay, at this time, we're on item 6.1, which is the annual nomination and appointment of chair and vice chair.
Do we need to have a
sorry.
motion for 5.3?
Yes, we do.
I'll motion to approve item 5.3.
Second.
We have a first and a second. Roll call.
Chair Zamora,
Yes.
Vice Chair Alterman,
Yes.
Commissioner Dinan,
Yes.
Joan Stewart is abstained. So Commissioner Basso.
Yes.
Okay, now we move on to item 6.1, the annual nomination and appointment of chair and vice chair per Planning Commission rules and procedures. The current order is Chair Tidy Zamora, Vice Chair Michael Sid Halterman, Commissioners John Dinan, Natasha Basso, Joan Stewart, and alternate commissioners Armando Rodriguez and Alex Rodriguez. The new order moving forward will be Chair Michael Sid Halterman, Vice Chair John Dinan, Commissioners Natasha Basso, Joan Stewart, Tidy Zamora, alternate commissioners Armando Rodriguez and Alex Rodriguez. Do we need a motion for that?
Yes.
Okay. Can we get a motion?
I'll move to approve item 6.1 as stated.
I'll second.
First and second, any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll take a roll call.
Sure. Chair Zamora,
Yes.
Vice Chair Alterman,
Yes.
Commissioner Stewart, Commissioner Basso,
Yes.
and Commissioner Dinan.
Yes.
Okay, it's approved. So we will now switch you
Switch
guys.
seats. Mr. Chairman.
Oh, yeah. I'll switch it.
You say. All right, and with that, we'll move on to item 7, new business. Item 7.1, the 2025 General Plan and Housing Element Annual Progress Report. California Government Code Section 65-400 requires annual report to be provided to the City Council, California Department of Housing and Community Development, State of California Governor's Office of Land Use and Climate Innovation. The purpose of the annual report is to provide the City Council, HCD, and LCI progress report on the general plan and its implementation, and the housing elements implementation status towards meeting the city's fair share of its regional housing needs allocation. And the 2025 annual progress report is not considered a project under CEQA.
Good evening, Teresa McDonald, Senior Planner here to present the 2025 Housing Element and General Plan Annual Progress Report. Okay. Next slide. So to provide some background, the Department of Housing and Community Development, or HCD, requires an annual report on the housing element implementation, and the Governor's Office of Land Use and Climate Innovation, or LCI, requires an annual report to monitor the implementation of the general plan policies, goals, and actions. Next slide. The 5th cycle housing element was certified by HCD on December 30th, 2015, and then adopted by the City Council on February 23rd, 2016 for the planning period ending in 2023. The city is currently implementing and updating planning efforts consistent with the 6th cycle housing element period, which spans from 2023 to 2031. Next slide. The forms to be submitted to HCD include information such as progress in meeting the RENA numbers, number of housing development applications received, number of units approved, list of sites rezoned to accommodate the city's RENA, and number of units issued an entitlement, building permit, or certificate of occupancy. In 2025, a total of 88 units were issued building permits by the Building Division, which included applications from previous years. A total of 58 units were issued certificates of occupancy, and an additional 58 units were issued planning entitlements. Next slide. The 2005 to 2025 general plan was adopted on April 22nd, 2009, and includes implementation measures, strategies for each element. The 2025 annual report provides a summary of implementation activity completed during the final year of that planning period and acknowledges the need for a future comprehensive general plan update. Next slide. For 2025, some notable projects completed or in progress include approval of 2 new rezones and subdivision maps for a total of 58 single-family residential lots, the Riverbank Wine and Cheese Festival, and completion of 4 solar projects for the city facilities. The complete progress report may be found as an attachment 2 of the staff report. Next slide. No environmental review is necessary for this item as the annual progress report is not considered a project under CEQA. Next slide. To conclude, staff recommend the Planning Commission approve resolution number 2026-001, recommending the City Council receive and accept the 2025 Housing Element and General Plan Annual Progress Report, and authorize staff to submit the report to the Department of Housing and Community Development and the Governor's Office of Land Use and Climate Innovation. Next slide. That concludes my presentation. I'm available to answer any questions. Thank you.
No questions from the council? It's a public hearing item. Do we open the public? No, this is not a public hearing. All right, then. Entertain a motion.
Motion we approve,
Oh, we are required to. All right, well then, this is a public hearing, so we will now open it up to public comment if there is any. All right, seeing none, so we'll close public comment.
move we approve resolution 2026-001.
I will second.
All right, with a motion to approve, can we get roll call, please?
Chair Alderman,
Yes.
Vice Chair Dinan,
Yes,
Commissioner Zamora,
Yes.
Commissioner Stewart,
Yes.
and Commissioner Basso.
Yes.
Passes 5-0.
All right, moving on to public hearing items. We have item 8.1, General Plan Amendment and Zoning Ordinance Amendment 01-2025. This is the Housing Element Adoption and Land Use Element Amendment and Zoning Ordinance Amendments related to the Mixed Use CX1 Zoning District and the RENA Overlay District.
Thank you, Chair, members of the commission. My name is David Niskanen with JB Anderson Land Use Planning. I'm joined today by Jayla Smith, our Associate Planner at JB Anderson, as well as Mark Niskanen, President of JB Anderson Land Use Planning. We are pleased to present to you tonight the six-cycle housing element for your consideration and recommendation to the City Council. This process has been over 2 years in the making with extensive public outreach and input, as well as over a year of review with the State Department of Housing and Community Development Department. Housing elements are highly regulated by the state and are required to adhere to housing element law, which seems like it's ever changing to address the state's housing crisis. In addition, the regional housing needs allocation, which is the number of units that each jurisdiction has to plan for over the 8-year planning period, also has increased substantially compared to years past, previous cycles. Both of these issues have made the housing element adoption process quite difficult to achieve and a lengthy process at that. Next slide. Included in the staff report tonight, we printed out 2 items for your consideration. First is a memorandum describing some technical edits that we made after the agenda was posted for tonight's item. These are technical edits based on this state's comments that they gave to us last week, and they're minor in nature, which I'll go over later on in the presentation. And the second is a letter that we received from HCD last week stating that the housing element meets all statutory requirements, meaning that if it was adopted and sent to the city or sent to HCD today, that document would meet all of housing element law and would become certified. And that process has taken over a year to get to. For tonight's presentation, I'll be providing an overview of the housing element update and the process that has led us to tonight's presentation. And Jayla, Associate Planner with us, will provide some technical aspects of the housing element document tonight. If you can go back a slide for me, please. Back one more. Yeah, back one more as well. Thank you. I just wanted to provide an update and what's included in your packet tonight, because it includes multiple components. The first is the 6-cycle housing element adoption document. That's a document that combines all of the information that we've received as well as researched over the past 2 years to meet state housing element law. As well as in your packet tonight is a number of implementing actions that were required to take based on state law. One is a general plan amendment to the land use element to clarify maximum density for the mixed use and higher density residential designations. The second is a zoning ordinance amendment that does a couple of things. First, it establishes what's called a by right approval process per state law, which we'll go into more detail later on in the presentation, as well as provide a process for which religious institutions can obtain more housing by right on their sites. And then the third are site-specific rezones and general plan amendments and specific plan amendments that'll be discussed in greater detail in 8.2, but nonetheless, it's an implementing action as part of the housing element document that's going to be before you tonight. Next slide, please. Just to provide a little bit of a background on the housing element adoption process, it's one of the elements of the city's general plan that covers an 8-year period from 2023 to 2031. The previous housing element was adopted in 2016 and certified by the state shortly thereafter. As noted, the housing element is a unique element of the general plan in that it requires review by the State Department of Housing and Community Development for compliance with state law. Next slide, please. The housing element process overall is a multi-year and multi-step process, which includes the housing element initiation and public workshops. We held a number of workshops through this adoption process. Research of the city's housing needs for the next 8 years, the site's inventory to address the regional housing needs allocation, which is handed down from the state and then divided amongst the jurisdictions within the county for the 8-year period. A new requirement called affirmatively furthering fair housing, and the creation of updated new policies and programs in the document. These components are then consolidated into a draft housing element and reviewed by HCD, which is part of step 2 and step 3 and step 4. We're now at step 5, which we're coming to Planning Commission and hopefully City Council through a series of public hearings for the formal adoption of the housing element and then sending it back to the state for certification. Which certification of a housing element is very important for the city. It means that the city is going to be able to obtain grant funding for housing development projects as well as infrastructure improvement projects. And so it's a very important component and it's required by law. Finally, next slide, please. And this provides an overview of the public participation that we engaged with during the update process. Most of the public workshops were done in 2024, and that's by design because that's when we're really preparing the meat and potatoes of the document. So we started off with a workshop with Planning Commission and with City Council. We also held a joint Planning Commission and City Council workshop to specifically discuss the sites inventory and of the overall housing needs of the community. We also conducted an online survey as well as key targeted stakeholder interviews with housing providers and nonprofits that work within the city. And then we held a number of meeting updates with Planning Commission and City Council through the update process. Next slide, please. And this slide provides an overview of the review periods. We've spent basically over a year of review with the state. It's become a little bit more involved with state review. The housing element laws are a lot more complicated than they have been in years past. And the state is very specific on how programs are developed, the timing of program implementation, as well as the sites inventory and how we're selecting sites, how we're using them towards the different income groups. So there's a little bit more to it. So after the public review draft that was available in late 2024, we sent our first draft in December, which each of these review periods, and it's very important to note that the first one is a 90-day review period with the state and subsequent reviews are 60 days. So every time we have to send something back to the state, it's a 2-month process at least to get comments back. So that that kind of extends a lot of the time frame out over the year. But we're within the 4th HCD review draft and we felt the updates were minor enough that we can bring the document to Planning Commission and City Council for consideration for formal adoption. And that's why in your packet tonight is the letter that we got from HCD last week, which states that we're in compliant with state law as long as we implement the programs that are required to be implemented at this time. So next slide, please. And for the rest of the presentation, I'm going to hand it off to Jayla. She's going to go through some of the more specific items and technical aspects of the housing element. And so take it away, Jayla. Thank you.
Good evening, commissioners. My name is Jayla Smith, and I'll be continuing the presentation and discussing the components of the housing element. So the housing element contains 10 chapters, which include information on demographics, housing needs and constraints, fair housing, the sites inventory, and the various housing policies and goals. In addition, the housing element includes the regional housing needs allocation. And so this is the amount of units that the city must plan for this housing element cycle. The housing element's required to demonstrate how the city can accommodate this number of units, specifically for each income level. So for this cycle, the city was allocated 3,591 units. And as you can see, they're broken down further by income categories from extremely low income to above moderate income. So this table, located in Chapter 6 of the housing element, outlines how the city's ability to meet its RHNA obligation. And this takes into consideration vacant land, underutilized land, potential for ADUs, pipeline projects, projects that are in the specific plan areas, religious institution sites, and proposed rezone sites. And so as you can see, with all of these lands and sites taken in consideration, the city is able to meet this allocation with a surplus. So the next couple of slides are just maps that these are also included in the housing element document, but these are just a visual depiction of where the sites in the inventory are located. So this map is specifically for vacant parcels and they're color coded by their current zoning designation. And I'm just going to go through these briefly, but I can always come back to these if there's any questions. This map shows the underutilized parcels in the city. And what that means is there's sites that aren't vacant, but there's maybe one or two structures that are on the parcel currently, but there's a significant amount of land still remaining that is vacant that can be used for housing development. And then this is a map specifically of sites located within the downtown specific plan area. This map is the sites that are located in the Crossroads West specific plan area. This is a map of the pending and pipeline projects in the city. So these are projects that have been approved already by the city that are either pending development or currently in development. And this is a map of the proposed rezone sites for a higher density amount of housing. I do want to note that these sites aren't going to be discussed in detail in this specific presentation. They'll be discussed further in the next presentation for 8.2, but it's just included in here as reference along with the rest of the maps. So as discussed, the housing element includes a multitude of policies and programs related to housing development. So I just wanted to highlight a few of them. There's program 1.1A, which is specifically focused on the site's inventory and rezone program. Program 1.1B is focused on monitoring development in the Crossroads West specific plan area. Program 1.1C will be focused on updating the city zoning code to ensure that the ADU section is compliant with state law. Program 1.1D will implement the by right approval program, and I will discuss this later in the presentation. Program 1.1F, which is focused on monitoring the progress on pending and approved projects. Program 1.1H, which is developing a streamlined review process on religious institution sites. Program 1.1I, which will establish a maximum density for higher density residential and mixed use for those general plan designations. And program 3.1J, which will include several amendments to the city zoning code related to housing. So these are just a few of the programs. The entire list of all the programs can be found in the housing element document. So as David mentioned, there are a few implementing actions that we're, in addition to the adoption of the housing element, are asking the commission to take action on and recommending to the city council. So one of these implementing actions is a general plan amendment to the land use element. So within the land use element, it includes a list of all of the land use designations and associated densities and building intensities that are allowed in the corresponding zoning districts, which are further outlined in the city's municipal code. Staff identified that the higher density residential and the mixed use land use designations do not have a defined maximum residential density. So staff is proposing a general plan amendment to modify these two land use designations to establish a maximum residential density. In addition to the general plan amendment, staff is also proposing zoning ordinance amendments. This includes 3 different components, the first of which is the by right approval process. So by right means that the city cannot require a conditional use permit, a planned community permit, or like any other discretionary review that would constitute a project under CEQA, or the California Environmental Quality Act. And so this by right approval process would only apply to specific sites. It's not applicable to the entire city. And it's only applicable to the sites as outlined in the draft ordinance. Sites that are listed as low income in the housing element, specifically, it's outlined in table 10 of chapter 6. So those low income sites that are located in that table, this by right approval process will be applicable to, in addition to sites that were identified as vacant in the previous two housing element cycles and non-vacant in the previous housing element cycle. This will also be applicable to sites that are subject to rezoning as depicted in the housing element, and sites that have at least 20% of the total units that are affordable to low-income households. So those, again, as I stated, are the only sites that this by right approval process will be applicable to. I just wanted to highlight, to make that clear, it's not for the entire city. This will also include a by right approval for religious institution sites. Similarly, as I stated in the last slide, this isn't applicable to the entire city. It's only applicable to the specific religious institution sites that are outlined in table 15 of chapter 6. And so this will allow a by right approval to incentivize housing development on lands that are owned by religious institutions pursuant to Senate Bill 4. Lastly, this will include an amendment to the mixed-use CX1 zone. This will amend this specific zoning district to allow for 100% of residential uses and require that residential uses occupy at least 50% of a mixed-use project. And all of these amendments can be found within the draft ordinance that's in Exhibit A of attachment 2 of the staff report. So this proposed project is exempt from CEQA pursuant to the CEQA guidelines, sections 15061, subsection B3, as it is covered by the common sense exemption. This states that CEQA only applies to projects that have the potential for causing significant effect on the environment. While this project does include goals and policies and programs to meet the city's RHNA and fair housing goals, it does not involve any physical change or potential to create adverse effect on the environment. And this environmental determination is further discussed in the CEQA technical memorandum that is included in attachment 6. So as a part of this item, staff is asking the Planning Commission to take two different actions. The first of which would be approving the resolution to recommend to the City Council approval of the general plan amendment to replace the adopted housing element with the 6-cycle housing element, including the minor technical edits that David had mentioned previously. Amending the general plan land use element to establish the maximum density for the higher density residential and mixed use general plan land use designations, and to authorize staff to submit the 6-cycle housing element to the state department, the Housing and Community Development Department, for certification. And the second action would be to approve the resolution recommending to the City Council approval of the ordinance to amend the city's municipal code sections 153.067 and 153.071, and adding sections 153.166 through 153.169 entitled Regional Housing Needs Assessment Overlay. That's the conclusion of the presentation. Thank you, and staff is available for questions.
I have a question. It seems that item 8.1 and 8.2 are tied together.
Yes,
That the housing element cannot be approved without approving item 8.2. So would approving item 8.1 force us to approve item 8.2? Because if 8.2 doesn't get approved, then there's no need to submit the housing element because it would be incomplete.
Thank you. That is a good question. 8.1 establishes the program for which 8.2 is brought forth to you. The situation is that the housing element and the implementing programs need to be done at the same time. So if, for instance, an item at 8.2 is modified, we would have to go back and modify the document to update that program and to also potentially update the sites inventory, as well as that has kind of a whole list of items that would have to be done, including not limited to sending it back to the state for another subsequent review. So if item 8.1 is recommended for approval and there's an item at 8.2 that has a different recommendation, both can go to council for their consideration. But if something changes at 8.2, the 8.1 would have to change, if that makes sense. So doesn't mean that you have to approve both, but certainly 8.1 establishes a program for 8.2 to move forward.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the commission?
I have a question. For the RHNA overlay, that is essentially to determine how many available sites we have, or no, it's the, can you explain that again?
Yeah, it's a by right approval process, and it's a state law that requires that if we're using sites in the housing element that were considered vacant in the fourth cycle, that's two planning cycles ago,
Mhm.
as well as non-vacant sites in the last housing element, we have to establish this program that if a housing development comes forward on those sites specifically that have at least 20% affordable units to lower income households, that they meet the by right criteria that would allow them to just move forward with the project and not have to come to planning commission or city council or have any other discretionary permit like a conditional use permit. They would still have to meet the city's development standards as it relates to setbacks, coverage, off-street parking requirements, as well as objective design standards that wouldn't prohibit the project from moving forward, meaning that the city would be able to still require architectural element requirements, color requirements, material requirements, and things of that nature. So it's quite specific on which sites they're required for, and it's very specific in state law and how we apply it.
Do we have a count of how many parcels are available for that?
I can get back to you here in just a few seconds just to get that number, but it's quite small. It's only I think 3 or 4 sites in total that were used in fourth and fifth cycle. And then the rezone sites.
So
as
for
well.
those ones, it would be an expedited process as long as it's the
Absolutely.
20%
Yeah.
low income.
Yeah, if they meet the 20%,
Yeah.
that's a very important part of it. Yeah.
The council or commission? Okay. It's a public hearing. We will open this to the public. And note, this is for item 8.1, which is the general plan amendment and the zoning ordinance amendment. Item 8.2 will be discussed separately, which is the specific rezones and specific plan amendments later. So are there any questions or comments from the public on item 8.1?
Hi, my name is Diego Hernandez. I'm a resident of Riverbank since 2008, and I live adjacent to some of the changes that's going to be discussed in 8.2. But it does seem like 8.1 is specifically for 8.2. And some of those specific areas, I know maybe you want to wait for that comment, are civic use areas. One of them is actually commercial use. It's already designated that way. 2 of them are mixed use. I think maybe there should be a little bit of a broader conversation with the public as far as the civic use. We have very limited available civic areas that have been identified. And if that area was originally intended to be used as civic, then let's find out what we can use it for. Let's find out maybe how that could best suit our community if that was the original intention in the general plan. That was my comment. Diego Hernandez. Thank you. And I can't stay for 8.2, but I appreciate all your guys' work. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Any other comments from the public on item 8.1? Alrighty.
Hello?
Caller on Zoom. Yep, go ahead, please.
Yeah, okay.
We can hear you.
Hello?
Yes, we can
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead,
Okay.
please.
I have a question and I'm not sure if this fits in both of them or not. It has to do with the housing element itself, but, I live downtown in the downtown Pacific Plan area. So I haven't seen anything out here that specifically refers to the downtown Pacific Plan. And yet in the element itself, there is a map and thing, and there's at least 7 parcels in the downtown Pacific Plan, which is a small area of apparently parcels that you plan to rezone or whatever you're going to do to use them for something that, because 2 of them are close to where I am, and the zoning, it doesn't really match what they are. But my question is, I don't know where these come in. I don't know why there isn't anything specific to that part. Are you not discussing the downtown Pacific Plan area right now, or can you explain, please?
Would you like me to answer the question?
Yes, if you can, please. Thank you.
The downtown specific plan is discussed in the housing element. And that's why there's a map associated with sites that are available to develop or that we're using for the arena. There are no sites within the downtown specific plan, to my knowledge, that are being rezoned. So. You do want to add to that?
Let me just add real quick. I believe what the caller may be referring to is there's a map that shows both vacant and underutilized parcels within the downtown specific plan. That was just used to identify those as potential opportunities. There is no rezoning occurring with the downtown specific plan parcels.
The codes that they have on the map don't match. The reason I'm asking to record is because we have had no notice whatsoever of any of these projects that they're proposing or anything like that. They have not told us anything, no information, no notices, nothing. So I'm hoping if you're going to discuss downtown Pacific Plan, you would give us the same courtesy that you did the other side, the Crossroads area, and at least give us some notices and stuff of what you're planning to do in our neighborhood.
I think that the issue here is that we don't have plans for a specific development. This is just putting forth what could be developed in there if a developer wanted to come in and do that, I think is the issue. So there's no specific project planned, so that's why no notices have been sent out for a project.
So you're not going to approve the map then?
The map is identifying the areas within the housing element. But it's not approving a specific project to be built there yet. A project would have to be applied to for the city and go through the standard approval process at that point.
Okay. Okay, for now.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other public comments? Okay, we'll bring it back to the commission. Can I get a motion to approve item 8.1 as set forth in the staff report, which includes resolutions 2026-002 and 2026-003 and the draft city council ordinance, including the edits identified in the March 31st, 2026 memorandum regarding the technical revisions based on HCD guidance.
So moved.
I'll second.
Can we close the public hearing if there's no?
Oh, sorry, we'll close public hearing. Failed to say that. Do we need to repeat the motion and second?
I was.
I was a second.
I'll do roll call. Chair Alterman,
Yes.
Vice Chair Dynan,
yes,
Commissioner Zamora,
Yes.
Commissioner Stewart, and Commissioner Basso.
Yes.
Okay, it's approved 5-0.
All right, moving on. Item 8.2, the general plan amendment and specific plan amendment 01-2025 and rezone 02-2025, site-specific general plan amendments, rezones, and specific plan amendments to implement program 1.1A of the sixth cycle housing element, including the below listed items.
Good evening, Teresa McDonald, Senior Planner, presenting General Plan and Specific Plan Amendment 01-2025 and Rezone 02-2025, which implement the sixth cycle of the city's housing element. So the city identified 8 rezone sites to assist in meeting the RENA obligations as identified in Housing Element Program 1.1A. The project includes site-specific rezones and general plan amendments and an amendment to the Crossroads Community-Specific Plan to include a new land use designation of mixed use. As discussed in the previous agenda item, the city is required to identify available sites to accommodate its Regional Housing Needs Allocation, or RENA, as part of the Housing Element Update. Where adequate sites are not available under existing land use and zoning designations, state housing element law requires the city to implement a rezone program to make sufficient sites available to accommodate the RENA. Accordingly, the city evaluated the potential to rezone specific properties with the capacity of 668 units located within the city limits to implement Housing Element Program 1.1A and maintain compliance with state law. After multiple revisions to the proposed rezone sites to address concerns, the city ultimately identified the 8 sites outlined in red. The criteria for selecting the sites is established by state law and includes that it's zoned for residential use or planned for rezoning, available to be developed within the planning cycle, access to amenities, analysis of environmental factors, that it meets affirmatively furthering fair housing requirements related to location, that it's appropriately sized, not too big or too small, and the likelihood for redevelopment if the site is non-vacant. After evaluating the sites based on the criteria, the city identified a shortfall of 599 units to meet the city's RENA. As part of selecting the rezone sites to make up the shortfall, outreach to property owners included certified letters. And then if the property owners responded, there were additional phone calls and so on. Candidate sites for rezoning have been modified multiple times accordingly through the housing element update process due to site availability and property owner feedback. The housing element and the rest of the general plan must be consistent with one another, and this project is necessary to implement the current housing element and to maintain consistency between the housing element, land use element, and applicable zoning and specific plan designations. Approval of the site-specific amendments to the land use diagram of the land use element of the general plan will provide consistency with the proposed changes to the zoning designations of the sites. The existing and proposed general plan designations may be found in attachment 2 of your staff report. 6 of the sites are currently zoned Crossroads Community Specific Plan, or SP1, and accordingly an amendment to SP1 is required to rezone the sites to medium high density residential, or MHR, and mixed use, or CX1. The land use concept map for SP1 is being amended accordingly, and the text for SP1 is being updated to include the CX1 designation, which will be consistent with the zoning ordinance. 2 of the sites not located within SP1 are both being rezoned to multiple family residential R3, subject to the regulations of the R3 district as listed in the zoning ordinance. Here is a table that shows the existing proposed general plan and zoning for each site, which is provided as attachment 2 of your staff report. And here is the land use concept map for SP1 with the proposed changes reflected in red. The project is exempt from CEQA pursuant to Public Resources Code Section 21080.085 as the project includes site-specific rezones that implement actions contained in the 6th cycle housing element. The project is further exempt from CEQA pursuant to Guideline Sections 15061B3 as the activity is covered by the common sense exemption that CEQA applies only to projects that have the potential for causing a significant effect on the environment. The project changes are legislative in nature only, as required by the housing element, and there are no active development applications for the proposed site. Next slide. The Planning Commission hearing notice was published in the Riverbank News, posted at City Hall, and mailed to landowners within 300 feet of the specific rezone sites. In response to the public hearing notice, 5 emails of opposition have been received from surrounding landowners and area residents with concerns specifically regarding the rezoning of 0 Roselle Avenue shown on your screen. Commenters in general raised concerns regarding potential increases in traffic, crime, taxes, and service costs. Additional concern were raised regarding potential impacts to wildlife and natural habitat, the adequacy of existing infrastructure, the site suitability for development, land ownership, the loss of small town character, open space, and the enjoyment of the animals on site. The emails can be found in attachment 6 of the staff report. Following the publishing of the agenda, 4 additional emails have been received, which have been provided to the Planning Commission. 3 are regarding the site in Roselle, and 1 is regarding the site on Talbot. Specific to 0 Roselle Avenue, it's currently designated as public, quasi-public, and can already be developed with civic and institutional uses such as a city administrative office, community center with amphitheater, library, water storage tank, and similar uses. The rezonings are being processed to implement the city's 6-cycle housing element and satisfy state housing element law. As with all the rezoned sites, no development is proposed as part of this request, and the landowner is not under any obligation to sell or alter their current use of the property. Any future development proposal would remain subject to separate applications, public notification, environmental review as applicable, infrastructure analysis, and all standards and requirements in effect at that time. To conclude, staff recommends the Planning Commission approve resolution number 2026-004, provided in the staff report as attachment 1, recommending to the City Council approval of General Plan Amendment number 01-2025, rezone number 02-2025, and specific plan amendment number 01-2025, 6-cycle housing element implementation. That concludes my presentation, and staff and as well as Jayla and David are available to answer any questions. Thank you.
I have a question. Yeah, I want to say, if I understand what you've been saying, we've approved 8.1. If we fail to approve part of 8.2, it causes all kinds of hate and discontent, and we have to go back to 8.1 and mess with that again and send it back to the city. Am I getting that right?
Yes, that's correct.
So in effect, if we don't approve all of 8.2, we're in a lot of hurt.
We would have to, do you want to speak to that, Josh?
Our comments might be a little tamer because we're at Planning Commission tonight and the implications would be more serious at council. So you are free to vote as you, in your discretion, but yes, these items are tied together. If we were to modify 8.2 and start changing sites, it would trigger another state process. And the idea here is to get HCD certification to not be subject to the implications of having a non-certified housing element. However, your decision is not binding on the city, and this is going to council regardless. So whatever your vote is and comments are will be forwarded to the council, of course.
Okay.
Any other comments from the commission?
I just had one clarification. This letter that we received from the San Francisco Public Utilities Commission is in reference to 0 Roselle Avenue.
Correct.
Okay.
All right, this is public, or did you have one?
I'm still thinking.
Okay, we'll come back. This is public hearing. If there's any comments from the public.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Jordan Davidson. I live adjacent to parcel 3 at the corner of Roselle and Glow Road here in Riverbank, and I'm here today to speak about the proposed rezoning of this property. I want to be clear, I support responsible growth. I understand the state's requirements and the city's pressure, or this pressure that cities are being put under to maintain a compliant housing element, but compliance does not mean lowering standards. It does not mean including sites that do not meet the legal definition of being available and suitable for development. Based on the city's own statements, the parcel is owned by MID and is expected to remain in agricultural use until they decide at some unknown point to sell or develop it. This is not a timeline. This is not availability. This is speculation. How can this site be considered available for housing during the 23 to 31 planning period if there's no indication that it will actually be made available? So this question before you tonight is simple. Are we making decisions based on facts or assumptions? In addition, this parcel is heavily constrained by the Hetch Hetchy right-of-way, utility corridors, and the need for coordination with outside agencies, including the San Francisco Public Utilities Commission. Yet there has been no clear public analysis showing what portion of this land is actually buildable and no transparent calculation of the net developable acreage after accounting for these constraints. We are also being asked to rely on an environmental analysis from 1997, prepared for a completely different land use. This is not complete, or this is not a current or complete evaluation. And beyond the technical concerns, this land is not just a parcel on a map. It is a pasture that many in this community know well. Families walk here, kids stop and feed the horses and the cows. It is a part of the community's character. Decisions like this do not just change zoning. They change the everyday life of the people that live here. And this is exactly why it is important that decisions like this are grounded in accurate and realistic assumptions. This is not about opposing housing. It is about ensuring that the sites we rely on meet state requirements and are legitimate, defensible, and grounded in reality. If they are not, we are not solving a problem. We are creating a larger one down the road. As someone who lives by this parcel, I can tell you this is not theoretical. This is a decision that will directly impact my home, our neighborhood, and our surrounding community. For these reasons, I respectfully urge the council to deny, or at a minimum, reconsider and delay this rezoning until there is clear, documented evidence that this site is truly available, suitable, and properly evaluated under state law. Taking the time to get this right is not a delay, it is responsible leadership. Thank you for your time and your consideration.
Thank you. All right, there are additional public comments here?
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Michael Christie, and I live in Crossroads, closer to Antique Rose in the former KinderCare area for the last 20 years. And I agree with the gentleman before me. I really can't say it any better than him. I don't think should force the MID or any landowner to rezone their property while they still own it. I don't understand that, and I don't pretend to understand how government works all the time either. So, and my second question would be, can the city just look into other areas, to meet the 688 or 700 housing shortage? I mean, can we expand our sphere, if that's the correct term? Look out, into parcels, maybe across Clarabelle, the other side of the Crossroads East Shopping Center, something out there. And then, even if MID did decide to sell that land, the infrastructure, the utilities to change all that, reroute that water and that power, that any developer is going to come back, future developer is going to come back to the city and want the city to pay those fees. And we don't have that money. I mean, we don't have money for the wastewater treatment plant right now to do another 700 homes. When you figure in if Crossroads West is completed and the new K-8 school at Sylvan School District is built, our water treatment plant isn't going to be able to handle even another 700 homes. And I don't think we get the support we deserve from the state on that. I think it's a whole separate issue. So, really, I'd love to see the city, look into other areas. That corner of Glow and Roselle is so congested, the traffic, especially when high school's on, 8 months of the year, 9 months of the year. So I just, I'm not against responsible growth. But I just don't think that's the right area. And I don't think forcing any landowner, to rezone while they don't want to sell their land is the right way to go. So thank you very much. You guys have a great Easter holiday.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here? Public comment? Yep.
Hello, my name is Melinda Torres, and I actually my backyard faces that property. And this is the first time I'm hearing about any of this, which I understand it's been posted on your page and everything, but as far as homeowner feedback, I've gotten nothing in the mail, nothing at all. And that would be huge for me because I bought that home. We've been there for 20 years since Crossroads first came over and built. I know everybody's excited about the other Crossroads now. We were just as excited in that area. And we were told when we moved there in that specific lot that that area was owned by MID. They are never going to build anything on that part of that section there, right there where the cows are. We already have low income housing right across the street on Glow Road, right down the road, we already have, and that's fine. We were aware of that, but there was nothing for that area. It was supposed to be a park or something else, but they were not going to build in that area. My backyard faces that. You put in a apartment building, I have zero privacy at all. And the noise level, who knows? It's so small. I don't think it could handle in that area. Not only is the traffic awful, I don't know what's going to end up on the corner as a light post or whatever, but they can't put a stop sign at Glow because everything is too congested in that area when you turn down Glow from Roselle. So the traffic there's horrible. I couldn't tell you how many accidents even happen right there because people don't stop and that are turning and they don't stop and hit. But I do feel I would like to have more information about this going forward. So I don't know, like, is there letters or anything that goes out to the homeowners right there?
Yeah, so let me kind of address two things. So there was letters sent out to everyone. I believe it's within 300 feet, and they go to the registered property owner. So
I am a registered property owner and I did not get anything. I would have been more prepared tonight. I saw this on Facebook and that's how well, that's why I'm here tonight. I would have been better prepared, but I do feel we've been there for a long time and I just don't know how, if you build anything over my fence line, I don't know the privacy that I'm going to have. And there's only 5 of us that live right there. So we've been there for 20 years. So I know that if 8.2 is not going to get approved and you have to start over to 8.1 and do everything all over again, I understand that, but I would appreciate to really think about it and take the time to do it the right way. Because even if you have to start over from scratch and make the better decisions for our community, I would really appreciate that. So just take your time when you make your decision. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Are there any more public comments here? Do we have anyone? Sure.
Hi, my name is Catherine Davidson and I am a resident of Riverbank as well. So one of my concerns, obviously my son's house is next door to the pasture, but myself living in Riverbank, our utility bills have skyrocketed. And I know that the water treatment plant, like the gentleman has spoke about, does not have the capacity to foresee all these new houses. And so who's going to pay for that? We're going to continue to see our bills go up and up and up. And I've been a homeowner for 20 something years, 30 years. And I remember when it used to be $100 and now you're talking $370 a month or every 2 months. And how are the, retired people that have owned their houses, that their income's not changing, but yet their water bill still keeps going up for brand new houses that have nothing to do with the houses that they have owned for 40, 50, 60, even longer years. I know my in-laws who are retired and they talk about their utilities all the time. Like, how is it going to keep going up and why are they paying for new houses? If the city can't accommodate them, then why are we continuing to build houses? So that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. We have somebody on Zoom?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we
Hi.
can hear you.
Oh, hi. Thank you. I gave a comment on 8.1, but I had to run home. This is Diego Hernandez. I actually live 270 feet away from the horse pasture, and like the other comment, I didn't receive anything in the mail. I live on Spalding Court. One of my concerns, because I was unaware of this until a neighbor told me, and I asked her, "Are you sure that that's the property?" And she's like, "Well, I don't know." And then one of the gentlemen's who gave a comment in person, he messaged me on Facebook Messenger and told me, "Hey, I'm gonna go give a comment, and this is why I showed up." And then I had to run home. But one of my concerns about that is I understand we need to, get this housing element completed because it's a requirement. And similar cities have opted not to do it. Like Oakdale, I believe the city is threatening to litigate against them in other cities. But I'm looking at the general plan and I see that this property is designated for civic use. What was the intended area? Because when I look at civic use in my general plans, I see schools, I see our community center, I see the Riverbank Sports Complex. It seems like this plot of land would be better suited to something to benefit the community other than high density housing. Now, if it's the easiest to do it because it has remained vacant and it's been identified for 2 cycles, our housing element cycles, and that's the RENA numbers that we're trying to complete, and we just want to get it done just to get it done. If that's the goal, okay, that's the goal. I understand. And even if development doesn't happen, but why don't we identify what the area was intended for? Why was it designated as civic use? And if we're moving away from that by rezoning it, like I said, I think we should have a broader conversation. And thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. I thought we had someone else that had come up.
Hi, my name is Sandy Van Fleet, and I live on Black Sand, which if you walk down the end of our street, I've walked my grandkids down there many, many times to the pasture. And I have nothing better to say, more articulate than all these people ahead of us, but it would be really sad to see it go to high density where I don't know, I can't figure out how you can get 40 homes in 1 acre. I'm not quite sure. Jeremiah, how many? Under 5. So we would have, I don't know how many that all is, but they have said everything so well, and I think that's great. I just wanted to have another name to go along with everybody else's.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Rafael Torres. That's my wife that spoke earlier, so I just wanted on record that I do object to this too. I was on my way home from work. She says you need to come, so I will speak my objections too. When we did buy the house 20 years ago, we were under the impression that there was MID utilities under that land. It can never be developed. And that we were hoping that would be under civic that we would get some kind of a park in a much needed area, especially if the city's growing. We need more parks. We need more things for our community. Like everybody else said before, I'm all for more affordable housing. My kids can't afford to live in California either, but I just feel like this was rushed. If we don't get this 8.1 approved and 8.2 can't be approved, well, obviously we approved 8.1. But it does need to be reconsidered, and it feels like very rushed, even if they don't develop anything on this land, but just to have it rezoned, that means it can be done correctly, right? Am I right? If it is rezoned, they can in the future do build houses on there. So I think we just need to make sure we're really thinking this through and consider it. And so that's my objections. And it's a beautiful, those horses and cows have been there forever, and we love enjoying seeing people come up there, feed the cows, feed the horses. It's just gives a really nice sense of community there. So hopefully you don't lose that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Cheryl Van Horn, and we live directly across from the Cows and Horses on Roselle on the east side. And I just don't understand what that piece of property, the amount of homes that you could put there. You got Crossroads West going in, all kinds of new homes, new park, new school. What is the need for that one little area right there? We were told also when we bought the house 26 years ago, there would be no development there at all. That MID owns it, it would never be changed. So I'm really very much opposed to this whole thing, and I really hope that you will rethink it and maybe just take this off the agenda for forever. Thank you.
Jim. All right, do we have any more public comments?
My name is Jeremiah Johnson. I'm the current tenant there at the corner of Glow and Roselle. Me and my dad have leased that property since the 80s. And I used to be able to see Oakdale Road from there. I used to hunt pheasants, and it shrunk when they extended Glow Road. So I lost some of that. When they put the houses in, we kind of lost some of that. And then they widened the walking path. We lost some of that. But I like to think that the people that moved into that area appreciate it. I feel like I'm a pretty good steward in maintaining the ground and spraying the weeds. And I have no problem with the public that feed the cattle. I get approached all the time, and I have, I love kids that go out there and feed. And I think it's a great thing for the locals right there. And I'd hate to see it go away. I'm just here to appreciate the outpour from the public. Thank you.
My name is Jake Van Vliet. My wife got up and spoke a little bit ago. We live on Black Sand. The reason why we purchased the house where it's at is because that was a dead end street. It was going to be a safe place for our grandkids to play and not have to worry about a lot of traffic. I'm a farmer. The ag part of me loved the cattle at the end of the street. And our grandkids are a little older now and don't walk down there, but I watch a lot of families from the area go down there every night. It's something the community does. So I hope you would reconsider that area. Thank you.
We only get one chance. There will be another option. Thank you.
All right, do we have anyone else?
Yeah, this item's scheduled for city council April 28th. So, yeah, that would be the next date following whatever recommendation the planning commission makes. Yep.
I have a question. Does item 8.2 need to be approved in its entirety, or can it be amended?
Recommend approval, or if you recommend denial, explain the basis for the denial. Why, which properties you'd like to exclude.
Okay.
Deny it, and you could explain, oh, thank you. Explain why, which properties on which basis, and that will be forwarded to the council, or the planning commission would have to agree on a motion of approving subject to which changes.
And so if we approve this using his amendment, if it comes back to us and we have further objections, will we be able to do that?
If it comes back to you, it would probably be a longer, if the council agrees and adopts the ordinance as recommended by the council, that it might be a bit of a process by the time it gets back to you. Because it has, if the council adopts something changed from what's in the documents, that would probably be a longer process than just simply coming back quickly and adopting it in a different fashion.
Sorry, I have a question. The zoning that's currently there, the quasi-public zoning, that doesn't limit any potential development. So this change to change the zoning to residential, high density residential, mixed, whatever it is, that doesn't mean that there's any kind of project underway. There's no plans. The property owner doesn't have to sell. that's correct? So it's changing it to essentially allow and say that we have the space for this. That's what our goal is here with the change with the zoning, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. A way of looking at this is a planning exercise just to show that the city has enough available land to accommodate our regional housing needs number.
Okay, another question on that. Since somebody mentioned, if it is actually buildable, because there's those hetchy lines going directly over it, was that considered? Do we know if that parcel is the full however many acres, if it is actually developable?
And it is developable. You do get into issues. If you had to run utility lines under Hetch Hetchy, they require such a great separation distance that almost makes it either too costly or impractical. When we looked at this particular property, it does have utilities on Glow Road that could service kind of the north half. And the name of the street on the south is escaping me, but there is a connection. Utilities were actually stubbed to this property when that subdivision was developed in the early 2000s.
Okay. But still, if we were to go forward and say we accept it as is, doesn't mean that there's no changes happening. The property owner is not forced to sell.
No, and actually in discussions with MID, that was some of their concerns. They just wanted the assurance that they could continue to kind of farm it or have animals on the property. And we have no intention of, revoking the ability to have animals or to continue farming the property. And so, yeah, I don't believe MID is out there looking for a potential developer to sell it to. They've indicated they're just going to hold on to it.
Okay, so they're not necessarily opposed to a change in zoning because it doesn't affect their plans?
Doesn't affect their property rights in a way.
Thank you.
I think also to add to that, I believe Teresa said in her report that none of the owners subject to these rezonings would have to change their current use of the land as it is. They could continue to enjoy it as is, more or less indefinitely, as long as they would want to. I'd like to reiterate that what was just said, that none of the owners are obligated to change their use. None of the owners are obligated to develop. Also, I'd like to ask, and I'm pretty sure of the answer, but I want to clarify. This zoning change, does it preclude an additional zoning change to something else if the use of that land is determined to be something better in the future? So for example, if this goes through and that particular property is rezoned to, what is it, HDR, I believe, the high density residential, let's say in 2 years, someone wants to rezone it to planned development or even back to a quasi-public use. This does not preclude that possibility. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct. And I'll take it a step further. And throughout this process, we've been trying to work with property owners that are agreeable to it. There is, for the most part, we've whittled it down. We've basically went through every vacant land in the city and gotten down to these. Now, we have been in discussions with various property owners and told them if a development proposal comes forward that kind of they could utilize their property in something other than residential, we would try to accommodate those units somewhere else in the city, and that's done through part of the entitlement process of that project. There's a finding that has to be made that shows we can accommodate those units somewhere else in the city.
Okay, we do have a caller on Zoom. Yes. Okay. Caller on
Hello?
Zoom, you can go ahead. Yes.
Yeah, I asked a question before regarding the downtown Pacific Plan area. Because we're very small between Fourth and the calendar over there and the animal plants, the cannery's already got all industrial in here now, so there's very little for us, but I have a feeling with 7 projects, we're gonna have the same problem they are. My question is, you've got this CX1 zoning that you're putting in there. that you're trying to adopt. And you got the city code and you got in this case, you've got the code for Crossroads out there. Which one overrules the other? How do you get them to all, because they have to be all in compliance. How do you get them in compliance? Which one does what? Thank you.
So part of the project includes an amendment to the Crossroads Community Specific Plan, SP1, which will incorporate the CX1 designation. So it'll be compatible.
Thank you. Have you already been up for item 8.2? We can't allow you to come up again, unfortunately. All righty, thank you. All righty, if we have no more public comments, we will, we have a new speaker.
My name's Jerry Richard. Good evening. His question in the housing element doesn't guarantee development. They try to downplay the impact. So I understand that, but the housing element is still required sites to be realistically available and suitable. Where that's where I believe the parcels do not meet the standard. I'm not sure what he was trying to say there.
I understand that. Josh, can you speak on or? So the question is, one of the requirements is that these properties have to be suitable and available for development. And basically, what is the definition of available? Like, what does it mean for a property to be available?
David may be able to help me out here a little bit, but I believe, first of all, it's got to be in the current city limits, right? And then you got to have available.
Yeah, there's a criteria in which the sites are reviewed, and that criteria is established by state law. It has to be zoned for residential uses. In this case, it's a site that would be rezoned. It has to be potentially available to be developed within the cycle, has to have access to amenities as well as infrastructure availability, either directly or planned within the cycle. And it has to be appropriately sized. Can't be too small, like less than a half an acre or more than 10 acres. With this site specifically, with the right-of-way, the Hetch Hetchy right-of-way, that is a factor that is taken into account. The state has what's called a default density that we're able to use, which is at 20 dwelling units per acre for sites that are zoned higher density residential. And that's what we use to calculate the number of units that would become potentially available, or better yet, or better stated, that are counted towards the city's regional housing needs allocation. It doesn't mean that if a housing development does come forward on the site specifically would be at that density or at that number of units, but for calculation purposes to make sure that we're meeting the state's requirements, that we're using that default density. So that's how it's done. So yes, the site constraints are taken into account. That's a very specific and required element of the analysis that we do with selecting the sites, both all within our vacant sites, non-vacant sites, as well as the sites that we're intending and recommending for rezoning to meet the regional housing needs allocation. Yep. Thank you.
All right, thanks.
While you're up there, I have a question. So all of these sites that are listed, if that one of those parcels was to be sold, would the new owner have to go with the new zoning, or could they, instead of high density, go back to very low density? Is that legal for them to do? How would that work?
The zoning would run with the land. So if the site is sold, the zoning would remain high density residential or mixed use or whatever it's rezoned as. If a property owner decides to do something different, come up with a different development plan, something like a commercial or other type use, and propose to change the zoning, then that would put the city in a situation where alternative sites would need to be selected to make up the difference in the regional housing needs allocation. It really comes back to the number of units that are intended or available for that site to develop. So it is possible. Certainly, the city is not a developer. The city does not force people to develop, sell, or anything that would infringe on their property rights. If the property owner decides to keep the property as is for however long they want to, they certainly can. If they decide to develop within the constraints of the zoning that is established by the city's zoning ordinance, they can certainly do that or do something different. It's totally up to them. For this purpose and for the housing element, it's really meeting the state law requirements and specifically the regional housing needs allocation. It's become, certainly for the sixth cycle for a lot of jurisdictions in California, quite challenging because the number of units has significantly increased compared to years past. For example, in the fifth cycle, the city didn't have to do a rezone program because there was adequate sites within the city. And at that time, Crossroads West was being proposed and shortly thereafter annexed into the city. With the sixth cycle, because the RHNA numbers are so much higher than the last cycle, it necessitates us to look at sites to rezone to make up that difference. The other factor too, and something that is really to consider with the vote tonight, is that the city has benefited from some high density sites developing, and that's great. There's sites that were developed on clause that were zoned high density residential to fabulous projects, both low income and market rate. But that also takes out some of the acreage that we would be able to use as part of this cycle. So that's another thing to consider, that we've done our best to look at all the sites that are available within the city, both vacant and underutilized, but we came up with a shortfall that requires us to take a look at some sites to make up the difference. Thank
What
you.
would be the penalties if we failed to meet the requirements?
Mr. Verinsky can probably answer that better than I can, but they're pretty severe from what I understand.
They touched on it a little bit earlier of you lose out on some grant funding opportunities. You're out of compliance with housing element law, so you are exposed to litigation. And if you don't have a certified housing element, it creates some pathways for developers to propose projects that severely limits our review and our ability to deny those projects.
Very dramatic.
There are real penalties, and this would not be the same discussion just a cycle or two ago, but the enforcement and the risk of not having a certified housing element have increased dramatically in recent years.
Thank you.
When is this due?
Past our due date already.
Technically, we're past our due date,
Mm.
but we have been in constant contact with HCD. David and Jayla, myself and Teresa have met with them regularly. We've basically came down to a timeline. So as long as we stick with our adoption timeline, which takes us to the city council on the 28th, I think we're okay for now in terms of like enforcement actions. But I think anything we do to slip past that April 28th date, it's going to put us in jeopardy because we are out of compliance at this point.
And whatever we do today, it's a recommendation to the city council. So it's not binding whatever we do today.
I just want to agree with the rest. You have the big power lines. I know, if the vote is yes, you're gonna finish one street with Crossroads, and they'll run one street out, and then you have the power lines, and then the other side, the one lady, their houses are backed, so you're gonna be able to put a couple more there. Really doesn't seem like it's gonna really fill your quota for houses. There's going to be maybe 5 or 6 or whatever. But I just oppose the whole thing and hope you vote against it, even though it sounds pretty costly. But it doesn't sound like you're going to be able to put much in there with the power lines, and you had to move those, that would be a little costly too. So thank you.
All right. We'll go ahead and close public comments and bring it back for consideration. We get a motion to approve item 8.2 as set forth in the staff report, resolution 2026004, and the draft ordinance to city council.
Who moved?
I will second.
Okay, Chair Alderman,
Yes.
Vice Chair Dinan,
Yes.
Commissioner Zamora,
Yes.
Commissioner Stewart,
Yes.
and Commissioner Basso.
Yes.
It's approved 5-0.
Okay, moving on. Item 9.1, there are staff comments. Mr. Josh, sir.
Yes, good evening again. I know it's been quite some time. I was looking back. I think our last planning commission meeting was in November, if I'm not mistaken. So with that in mind, I just wanted to go over some of the construction going on in the city and just kind of give you all an update. If there's any questions, feel free to jump in. But just wanted to mention, first of all, with the Tractor Supply project, calling that kind of the Tractor Supply Shopping Center, if you will. So within there, Tractor Supply is still on track for a May grand opening. So sometimes real soon that should be open. And Grocery Outlet, which is just, next door to it, that is not far behind either. And then you have Habit Burger. So Habit and Grocery Outlet are probably a little bit behind Tractor Supply, but I think all three are looking for like a May, early June grand opening. And then
Real quick, do you have anything on the fourth pad there yet?
no, the fourth pad was a little, I guess one of the tenants they had been working with had recently backed out. I had heard it was going to be an oil change place, not a food. And so it's still, they're out kind of looking for a potential tenant still. And then sort of moving on to Crossroads West, I just kind of wanted to go through some of the recent stuff out there. I don't know if any of you guys have been through there recently, but all of a sudden Hobby Lobby is up, and that's a 50,000 square foot building. So it's pretty massive and noticeable. And then just next to that, both Trader Joe's and Skechers were announced recently, and those are now under construction. Not sure when the opening is scheduled for, but I'll be sure to keep you guys updated on that as well. And then just sort of next to that development along Oakdale and Freddie Lane, I'll call it, is we have pads 1 and 2, and those are going to be multi-use, mostly food users. There's a restaurant called Paris Baguette. There's Jersey Mike Sub. And then there's like a nail salon place that's going in there. I believe a few of the spaces are still open, and hopefully we'll know who those tenants are soon. And then kind of moving on adjacent to Raising Cane's, we've announced an Olive Garden. So we're actively kind of reviewing those plans and should be under construction fairly soon here. And then on the other side of Raising Cane's, there's a BMO bank that we're in the process of reviewing those plans as well. And then to kind of end it out, adjacent to Wendy's, Dutch Brothers has submitted application and plans to develop a second location, which would be the first location's next to Tractor Supply. The second would be in Crossroads West. And that's basically it. Staff is also working on a few permit and parcel map applications that you guys will probably see in front of this commission fairly soon. So I don't know if you have any questions or anything like that, but I'd be happy to answer.
What's our timeline on Riverwalk?
Oh, so that's a great question. So Riverwalk, we've been kind of working through this massive EIR, final EIR, and that's kind of been the biggest bulk of the work, I'll call it. Most recently, we're just kind of finalizing some items within the development agreement. And I believe once kind of everything gets finalized, we'll probably be looking at a public hearing fairly soon.
All right. Anything to add on the traffic and concerns of the North County Corridor construction? I know they're going pretty heavy on that one. I don't know if we've got any specifics from them.
I don't have any new specifics. I mean, I think the best avenue for seeing the most recent info is they have that website set up that has all the potential road closures. But I don't have anything in particular to share. So.
Yeah, I spoke with Mr. Lehman down in Stanislaus County, and he doesn't really have anything to share with me either, so. All right. No county referral correspondence or information, and so with that, we will adjourn this meeting.